JOJO Abbott.
I
I
just came alive.
so excited to have you on Artist to Artist. Honestly, I have been a big fan of your work, and then I got to see it in person, like both the digital work, the visual work, and then your opera, A God of Her Own Making. And I remember leaving, well, first of all, I remember being seated in the front row and just feeling every emotion possible as you delivered and shared this epic work. And then I remember leaving and like unable to stop thinking about it. You said it's less about the making and more about the being.
Mhm.
I want to know how you got there, or has that always existed as your understanding of what your work is, both to yourself and to the world?
No, I think, the process of discovery, the process of maturing into knowing what one's purposes takes time.
Hmm.
And it's an ever evolving space, it's an ongoing journey. And I think acknowledging that and sort of releasing into that is sort of like saving oneself a lot of resistance.
Mm.
Things come in time, and I think giving things time to unfold. Also understanding that some wisdom and some knowledge we're just not ready for at certain stages of our lives, right? So
Mhm.
the unfolding of that and the accepting of that also had to take some massaging into. So I would say that it is a journey, an unfolding journey that I'm still, humbled by and present within. But as it kind of gives me little nuggets here and there, and sometimes it gives me uh, perhaps bigger than nuggets, it gives me mountains to kind of try to digest. It teaches me. Life teaches me. Experience teaches me. Community teaches me. Creation teaches me. And so that allows for me to kind of delve into my why far more in depth and
Mm.
sort of uncover the why, because I think if I'm not anchored in my why, then I become like this thing that is easily blown by the wind rather than being grounded. And if I allow the quote unquote work to define the why, then I also feel like I'm easily swayed, or I set myself up to be easily swayed. And that's not the purpose of my existence. And so, yeah, time, honoring time, respecting time, being a student of time, I think really allows you to get sort of the gems out of life. Mm.
I love that. That resonates deeply for me. I feel like so much of my art practice has shifted into a caring practice,
Mm.
practice of deep care,
Mm.
and a processing also of the many layers of grief that I feel like, especially as Black people, we carry. And with that, we're living in a really tumultuous moment that the globe is feeling. And I keep saying now is the time for artists. Like, we need to center the artist in the reshaping of our world. And the opera, A God of Her Own Making, you, there was a song that you sang specifically that I remember just like tears falling from my eyes. And it was a song about I forgive myself.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
I don't remember all the words if you want to share them. But there's something
Give and I release all hatred left in me. Mm. Mm.
I, that song, I
Mm.
just felt like it felt like a almost like a universal call to all of us to
Mhm.
release the weight of hatred we may carry, whether it's for self or others. And I want to know more about that song, where it came from, what it means to you, what it means to you in this time, and how you're how you're processing.
Mm. I believe that these potions, which is another sort of stream of my sonic offerings, specifically made for that, right? I think that safe space, that cocoon that we can create for ourselves to kind of sit within. I think oftentimes when we think about forgiveness, we feel like we're giving a part of ourselves away, or we're succumbing, or we're showing up as weak, or we're not getting our pound of flesh. We're not getting what we're due. Judgment has not happened. Justice does not exist unless and until this is resolved by some sense of balance. Now, I come from a tradition that really believes in balance, right? And so, and then even in other spaces of beliefs and cultures, we believe that there's repercussions and karma and so on and so forth. And so understanding that in my existence, right, I can carry a lack of forgiveness, I can carry hatred, and I can say it's about that person who owes me something, but ultimately that balance is not for me to take care of at times. Sometimes I do have to handle that shit myself, but oftentimes it might even be far more effective if I allow the fates, the guides, the force of life to balance things out. And part of allowing that is releasing the hatred attached to it. Understanding, at least for me, in my traditional understanding, there is still a balance that is necessary. However, I don't have to carry hate in my heart for that to happen. And I guess maybe in the Christian sense, that's what they're talking about when they say you let it go and you trust God to sort of act on your behalf and to activate vengeance, so whatever it is. But
Mhm.
is it really even our responsibility to make sure that the other person pays for what they did? I'm of multiple minds on that. However, the essence of forgiveness is to let go without making it conditional. And I guess so then that puts forgiveness in line with love, right? Where
Ooh.
forgiveness flows like an everlasting stream. So when you say, I forgive and I release all hatred left in me, I forgive and I release all hatred left in me. This has nothing to do with you. I don't need to go into the chest of this hatred is connected to this person, that hatred is connected to that person. When I breathe, I feel where the hatred is stored and I'm releasing it for me. And that might clear space for the diplomacy to let go of my need for vengeance to be enacted. Because to some degree, forgiveness just can't be about, and I mean you're an abolitionist. Like,
Mhm.
forgiveness can't just be about there is no reparations, there is no
Mm.
accountability. There
Yeah.
has to be a system of repair and accountability, right? But there can
Yes,
also be forgiveness in that.
that's right.
We can release the rage. We can release some of that tension so that we can flow better, so that we don't have to carry that into cancer or disease. We continue
Mm.
to flourish and be a beautiful garden, even as we rage, even as we protest, even as we say hell the fuck no to the system.
Yeah.
How can we add more grease and more grace to this process of being?
Yes. Yes, 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 all the yeses.
Mm,
You have had like you just recently had a major solo show at the LA Louver. You also did a performance at along with the Luna Luna team. That was our first podcast on artist to artist.
beautiful.
And I'm sure you've been doing tons of other things. You did beautiful programming. We sat on a panel together
Yes,
during the
love,
LA
love.
Louver
Thank you
show.
for that.
Thank you. Tell us about it. How was it, and like what inspired the works? I and I'm sure many of our audience members were able to see it, but some did not see it. So I'd love for you to describe a bit about what you brought into the LA Louver.
Mm. I think even more so, much larger than what I brought into LA Louver was what was birthed into the universe.
Mm.
This portal that existed, ephemeral and yet everlasting and
Yeah.
infinite in its nature. It was a holding of space. It was a holding of the illusion of time, right? But crafting again that cocoon so that community could exist in dialogue with self and with ancestors and with essence and with life and with each other. A God of Her Own Making came with a very clear message in its initial birthing, and that was its third iteration. We did the first one in New York City at National Sawdust with Esperanza Spalding as a two-person opera. We came to LA with 3 nights at Red Cat, where expanded a lot more on the movement elements as well as the visual elements. And then we came into LA Louver as a month and a half long exhibition that had textile, sculpture, oil paintings, film, spatial sound in a quadraphonic format. So it kind of was a larger cocoon for
Mm.
medicine to
Mm.
and the technologies to exist in. And so I was really excited about that. The fact that the home could be there for a longer period of time and serve community for a longer period of time.
Mm.
And a God of Our Own Making really was an invitation to self actualize. It also spoke to the need for divine feminine centered principles and divine feminine leadership in this time. It spoke to the rigidity of masculinity and, how the masculine has been trained to show up as a box rather than a circle, really sort of forceful rather than gentle, sort of seeking to, take down the building rather than repair it.
Mm.
Oftentimes not thinking, as I, like to sort of reference it, and many people have referenced this throughout time, not thinking 7 generations, later and 7 generations before, having that foresight. And so I guess, and that's not to say that all of these things are exclusive to the masculine, because the
Mhm.
feminine can also be destructive, and lack all of that. However, within the essence of the divine feminine principle, which honestly doesn't really have much to do with sexuality, it's something that exists beyond the body. It's a force, it's a
Absolutely.
spirit. We can talk about womanhood separately.
Mhm.
But within this space, it's an invitation to consider repair. It's an invitation to consider
Mm.
reconciliation. It's an invitation to consider love first, looking at decision making and sort of like living our lives through a lens of love. It's all of those things that come before separation, that
Yeah.
come before destruction as a last resort, right? It
Yes.
offers multiple pathways. It's not a dualistic system. It's very, very expansive. And
Yeah.
it sheds skin and it's reborn over and over again. And I think that level of innovation, that level of openness, that level of critical thought, that level of presence is very necessary right now. To contemplate, to consider before we act is so necessary right now. To repair is so necessary right now. To be really crafty in that repair is so important right now. And it's to some degree, I would reference the, as I'm talking about it, I feel the essence of the snake, right? That shedding of skin, that cunningness, that slithering, that slowly moving essence that is still able to charge when it needs to, but
Mm.
can kind of go beneath the covers and come out. I mean, people demonize the snake, but there's a lot to learn there. And I think that references a lot of the feminine essence as well.
Mm. Mm.
You know, being able to be all of that, to shape, to flow.
Yes.
Water is the same. And so that work was really that invitation to both man, woman, and beyond to enter into that space of
Mhm.
considering alchemy, considering where the self can lead, and chart new paths that do not exist or have existed that we need to remember in order to remember ourselves. And so God of Our Own Making is simply that invitation.
Wow.
I think I went on for a while there, but
No, that was so beautiful. That was so beautiful and deeply resonant. And, I think a lot about times of horror,
mm,
and what kinds of conversations were happening during those times, and what kind of medicine, as you said, we can share in the times that we're living in. I didn't ever think that I would live through a moment like this, not when I was a small child. And then, lots of things have happened and transpired in the last 20 years, at least here in this country, but also across the globe. And so hearing you say all that, I just was like listening, not just with my ears, but with my heart and my chest and my stomach, and just like, what an offering. So much of starting artist to artist was to create an offering for artists to share with other people during these really painful times as a way to like see a pathway through. I really believe artists help us imagine the world that is possible and create those containers and spaces and portals, like you said, that allow us to actually embody that. That's what I felt when I was at LA Louvre in your portal. I was like, oh, it is possible to live a different kind of life. Like
Mhm.
this, outside of this, it doesn't have to be like this. So I'm grateful that you just like let it open and flow.
Mhm.
With that, I'm going to ask you a question about art as this portal for our imagination. And I wonder what you think about it. I know, you started with like, it's not about the making, it's about the being.
Mhm.
What do you think the role of the artist is right now?
I think first, like decolonizing this concept of like art, creation is breath, it's life, it's beauty, it's alchemy, it's harmony. We all participate in that. The ability to make something out of nothing, to create a new path, to see a future for yourself, that is all creation. To practice that space, that muscle, to exercise that muscle is something that we should all feel empowered to have access to because that's regenerative, right? So, reclaiming that process is something that is accessible to all people, that actually a lot of people indulge in and participate in without putting it within the Western language or within that context of capitalism.
Mhm.
So, art, creation, expression is happening all the time outside of the colonial Western context. What is art? Art is allowing ourselves to express ourselves, whether it's coming to a table with vulnerability, allowing ourselves to be seen, or molding clay into something, or being mindful about how we talk to a partner about something that really bothers us, being
Mm.
creative in that sense, being creative in our conflict resolution, being creative in how we create our own home space as a safe haven for ourselves and others, and the spirits we want to usher into our world. How are we crafting our lives? And I think that's where the being is more important because then you have internal principles and values that guide your output or your existence where you don't have to overthink it.
Yeah.
I think that gives us greater agency and it allows us to see beyond that which is right in front of us. And that's really, really important right now. So, what is the role of art? Perhaps it is to make this process accessible to all people, this being accessible to all people. Referencing a God of our own making, this invitation to self actualize. It's a very creative one, especially when you exist in a dimension that tries to box you in and tells you how to show up. You resist in your being, in your fullness, right? In your blossoming, in your rebirth, in your owning space with purpose and with love. And so I think I consider all of that. And I say we can have a piece of art on the wall that moves people or doesn't move people and never gets seen or seen by millions, but for what we hope to be the end result of that is people really reaching beyond the new mind and consulting with many aspects, many senses to create that space of harmony that actually is sustainable. Well, hopefully.
Wow. I'm just like, there are so many sound bites here where I'm like, ooh, that's so good. Ooh, we could pull that. I'm like, my brain is very activated in a great way. So you are not bound to a single medium. That
Yeah.
was so exciting coming to your show and being like, wow, I resonate with this. Like, there is not one thing that you are bound to. And I want to know why. And I want to know how that has been in an art world that is wants to bind you to a thing. Like, how, what's that reception been like? And how does it feel? And yeah, tell us more about like do you, why is your being through so many mediums?
Well, one, we experience life through multiple senses and through different materials and mediums. Two, I really think about my practice and my existence a lot.
Mm,
I like to say 80% of my practice is actually contemplative. So I
mhm,
have two philosophies that kind of help to elaborate on this. There's Fifia Auto, and then there's message over medium. Maybe we'll go into message over medium first. Message over medium really just liberates the the being from certain things. If the message is the most important thing, then I should consider how I can be an effective messenger.
mm,
I think in younger years, or perhaps even older years, a lot of artists say, I've created this thing, you either get it or you don't. I practiced that for a while. And for me personally, because of the spirit that calls me to do the work that I do, I had to humble myself into practicing being a diligent messenger and also being a good steward of the message that I had been called to share.
mm,
So then it became about clear. People will say, "Oh, Joe Rabbit, your work is very potent." Well, it's the need for clarity. It's the need for that message to be clear and for the material to become a tool for that rather than the other way around.
that's
Um,
right.
and I totally respect artists that create and then sit back and look at something or feel a moment of inspiration because they saw somebody's work. And all of that is still very much valid. I'm saying for me personally, what drives this is this philosophy of message over medium.
Yeah.
But also, Fifia Woto allows you to kind of go deeper into a supporting philosophy that also stands on its own. But this idea that something does not be anything actually is not validated when it's discovered, named, owned, any of that colonial shit.
Yeah.
Things or beings or forces exist and are full and whole, whether acknowledged by us or not.
That's right.
We give ourselves a lot of credit and we go and say, "This is my land, this is my cup, this is my this is my that," understanding we can't take any of it with us. What is truly ours is not even ours the more we learn about it, right? It's not the physical. But anyway, I digress. To exist is the most potent thing, not the discovery.
Hmm.
And so when you exist in your fullness, you are powerful, you are whole, you are potent. You can't give the validation that much power over determining your value. Be. So, and I'll throw in this third philosophy, power to the God within, right?
Yes.
Um, and that one community activates with me all the time or with each other or in their meditations. We see each other, power to the God within. Or you activate it for yourself, your family, as a prayer, as a conjuring before that meeting where you're getting ready to fucking go off. You know what I mean? And step into your fullness. I believe in all of that. And so that's where I operate from,
Hmm.
um, ultimately.
That's right. That is right. Really glad I asked that. Um, what, this is like not on the script, but I'm curious. What is like, I hear you naming sort of like the intentionality, right? Like I hear intentionality. I also hear like the God within like allows you to create what comes out.
Mhm.
Are there moments where, like, something like performance feels more salient than visual art, or, video work feels more salient? Like, is there moments where you're like, "Actually, this is the channel right now?" And when do you know that? And do you even think about it like that?
I know that I being an interdisciplinary artist at a time, I think 5, 10 years ago, it wasn't cute. Now everyone's and I love it for us. But that shit, people would just be like, she's crazy. She's just all over the place. She
Doing
has
too
no
much.
focus and blah blah blah. Like, she's just cuckoo. And people would want to work with you, but then you weren't in one place, so they were kind of like trying to force you to be in one place, and then you would say no, and they'll say she's crazy. Um, you know what I mean? I
Yep.
think I started to really believe in the power of the 10,000 hours, right? So if you wanted
Mhm.
to be good at something, you put in all this time. So then I was like, okay, I'm this person who wants to be really good at all these things. I don't want to just have the title. I met so many artists who say, I do this, and there's no portfolio anywhere. There is no nothing. Not a thing, not a thing, not a thing. And also living in New York,
Yeah,
everybody was
yeah,
at it. Everybody was, but you did not practice your practice.
yeah.
And so I was really challenged. Like, if I want to do this thing and people are devoting their whole lives, I also met a lot of people who were like really specialized in things that they did and were so excellent at
Yeah.
it. And I was like, man, to get to that level is going to take a long time. And I'm probably not going to reach that level because the potency that you derive from really giving all of your energy to one thing
Yes.
is very valid.
Yes.
The practice takes practice. The
Yes.
practice takes practice. You have to show up, you have to participate, you have to become better.
Yeah.
You have to discover the different aspects and depths of self, right, by showing up and activating. And so, I really have just been trying to cheat with the homework a little bit, you know. And part of that also comes with being a visual learner.
Yeah.
So, I'm like, save me all the extra stuff, just do it for me to see,
Mhm.
like I learned well that way. I know how I can absorb information and
Yes.
kind of like be able to empower myself. So
Mhm.
actually knowing how you learn is really important. Not everyone learns within this like Western system. How do
That's
you empower yourself with information, with skill? You discover that for yourself, right? And so yeah, that's those are a bit of my thoughts around that.
I love that. I have a few more questions for you.
Okay.
What are you feeling inspired by right now? What's inspiring you?
I think in some ways it's humanity. What we're going through right now
Yeah.
as a collective is hard. There are a lot of elements that are really, really hard. And at the same time, I'm inspired by the possibilities that I see. And I'm also inspired by the audaciousness to share our pain.
Yeah.
And also hoping and trusting that we're not tokenized, we're not abused in our
Mm.
vulnerability. Right?
Mhm.
How do we create safe spaces for each other, and how do we actually show up in community? How do we show up for ourselves? I'm inspired by all of those possibilities, and also witnessing just spaces that you sometimes get caught up in your own bullshit and you forget that they exist. Spaces of love, spaces of community, spaces of nourishment. you know, I'm inspired by that. I am inspired by all of it. I oftentimes just sit and witness and contemplate, and gratitude abounds, from there. And so, yeah, I'm inspired through the good, bad, and the ugly.
You know what's so interesting for me about artists is some there this is not like it's not blanket for all artists, but so many artists that I connect with and meet with and spend time with have a quality that is about possibility, like imagination, and it's really quite beautiful
We have to
to
imagine. It's our right to imagine. But also, we
should.
need time to imagine. So it's our right to have time. And then we need food in our belly to imagine. So it's all right to have food. We need shelter to feel safe to imagine. So there's a privilege attached to imagination. And so
Hmm.
it can't just be this idea that we want people to be able to imagine. How do we create space and the resources for people to imagine
That's quite
and
beautiful.
support people's imaginations? Because the more we support that, the more they imagine and the more people create their own localized solutions, right? Because oftentimes outside intervention doesn't work. It assumes what we need, but we know ourselves best. We know our communities best. We know our being best, you
Yeah.
know?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder. I think about imagination work a lot as an abolitionist, and hearing you remind us what it takes to be able to imagine the
Yeah, people like
kinds
say
of
that shit
support.
like it's for free.
Yeah,
A mother with 4 children does not have the privilege.
that's right.
When people say, "Oh, I'm working on my spiritual growth," I also believe spirituality is very expensive. Think about it this way: somebody goes to church, and Ghanaians love church, and I would even say Black people have loved church historically.
Yep.
You go to church Monday night, Wednesday night, Friday night, Sunday. You're up in there all day. If somebody was paying you even minimum wage, $15 an hour, how much is that?
Wow.
And then think about how many of us are willing to, well, pre COVID, even more so, willing to work 40 to 80 hours a week or more,
Hmm.
but could not afford 2 hours for ourselves. I remember I'd do workshops and I'd be like, how much are you getting paid per hour? And people would say anywhere from $10 to $20 to $50 to $100. And I said, okay, how much time do you give yourself for your own spiritual and physical, emotional, mental well being? And they say, well, I can't afford it. And I say, well, you give that time away for $40 to every 2 hours, $100 every 5 hours. That's how much you can pay yourself to practice your own liberation and your own evolution. And then we can actually quantize it. But it costs a lot
Yeah.
to grow in any type of way when you are pushing against these systems that desire to literally bleed you dry.
Hmm.
You have to fight to nourish yourself, and it shouldn't be that. And so I think making self love and healing accessible economically
Yes,
is important.
that's right.
We can't just talk about these things. We're not fake shamans in Venice, wearing $8,000, kaftans.
Silly sometimes. It's like feels ridiculous,
I
you
mean,
know?
but that's how expensive this shit gets for some
Yeah.
people. You know
Yes.
what
No,
I mean?
you're
That person is
absolutely right.
charging you $1,000 for an hour of their time. We can't afford that shit, right? And we shouldn't have to spend that much.
That's
So
right.
decolonizing that space, making it equitable, making
Yeah,
it accessible, empowering people economically to have that time and space is an important part of the work. We can't just go around like burn some sage
that's right.
and meditate. Nah, that's not empowering to anybody. Fuck that.
Jojo Abbott, tell me what is next for you?
Oh, what is next is continue to be of service,
Hmm.
continuing to value every breath. I cussed out somebody real the fuck bad last week.
Yeah, tell us.
And I cussed them out so bad. I cussed them out in my native language and called their colonizer ancestors to help them translate it.
How'd it
What's
feel?
next is trying to be a better person, but knowing I am not fucking Jesus Christ. I will let you have it. I'm trying to be a nicer person.
Oh, we appreciate
Be
you.
nicer, habit, be nice. Be best. I think practicing what I preach. What's next is continue to serve community and being radical about this love thing, and continuing to be a witness and be a participant and be a co-conspirator and yeah, May we all live long and may we prosper.
Oh,
I
sure.
think that's our right. We deserve it.
That's right.
In some ways, we're entitled to it. No, actually, fuck it. We're entitled to it.
That's right.
That's
Yes,
what
we
God
are.
desires for us. And outside of greed, fear, and all these destructive systems, that's what we would all have.
Hmm.
So also free Palestine, because that needs to happen very soon. Free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan, free Haiti, free
Hmm.
America, free
Ooh,
all of us, within and without, you know? Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. What is something you would share with an artist? What's something you want to share with an artist right now who is feeling the fear of showing up for themselves or showing up for others? Like, is there anything you would want to share with someone who's listening that is like deep in their fear and they can't come out of it?
Hmm. Fear is something that can cripple us, but I also believe that really exploring our why liberates us from that fear. Because uncovering our why lets us realize that what we're doing actually is an act of service most of the time. Oftentimes, our inner purpose, the thing that has been calling us, is actually a great service to humanity. And when we're not in the chokehold of these destructive systems, we can actually operate in that love that is infinite. And we can show up as community builders and, like nourishing people. And so I would say, sit with your why, uncover your why, become intimate with your why,
Hmm.
and look at it through a lens of love and think about it many generations forward and before you, and try to find harmony, because the more you lean into that, the more you're empowered, the more you have clarity, the more you can see the possibilities and the resources that already exist in your orbit for you to more than make this possible, because everything you need is already there. And the more you step into that, the more you attract all the other things that you need. Um, yeah. Um, do it for you. Do it for creation. Do it for others. Do it for life. Do it for love. Know your why. Yeah. And allow that to continue to evolve. Yeah. Do not
Wow.
let fear win. Also, get yourself a plant. I have plants here, but get yourself a plant.
It's quite beautiful.
Get
Well,
yourself.
JoJo Abbott, thank you for spending this hour with us. This was quite glorious. It's really hard to do an interview when you just want to listen to someone talk the whole time. But I, I worked really hard on my questions and also like being responsive because everything you gifted us this hour was just such medicine, such vulnerability, such love, such care. It matters so much right now. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining Artist to Artist.
Thank you for having me.
Of course,
It's been
anytime,
a
every
pleasure.
time.
Yeah. Power to the God within. Jojo Abbott.